Taking a seat on your mat, we'll begin with Divamukti Mudra, bringing the ring fingers and little fingers together, open up your palms, and then just find a comfortable resting place for your wrists onto the inner edge of your thighs, or you can just simply hold your hands in front of your solar plexus. I love this mudra because it represents some of the dimensionality of personality. And it could also apply to our weather recently because it can't quite decide if it wants to be winter or spring. And I'm guessing very quickly we'll transition into summer. So when you hold your hands in this gesture and contemplate on your left open palm, imagine that that left soft open palm represents your deepest authenticity. This is who you are at the deepest part of your core. All the conditioned beliefs you have and the heritage that's come from previous generations is held in this image of yourself. It's authentically at the deepest level who you are. And it represents your actions when no one else is looking. And when you gaze down at your right open palm, this is your more filtered personality. This is perhaps the image of yourself that you project to the world in the way that you want to be seen or you wish to be seen. And that's just as important of an aspect of ourselves as our authentic personality, because the whole person is always a combination of those two. So I guess if we transition this meaning into the weather, one hand would be winter and one hand would be spring. And I guess if we put them together, we've probably got summer. But that's a whole nother story. So when you bring those two aspects of your personality together, feel and sense how your hands come together and what it feels like to feel the length of your fingertips pressed together and the ring of your palms pressed toward one another and your thumbs resting gently at your heart. Thinking about all of the aspects of your personality that comprise who you are each day and in every breath. And we're always looking to balance our energies between the most authentic parts of ourselves and who we wish to be in this world, how we choose to change and evolve as time and each individual breath arrives. Being in a place of stillness, feel your sitting bones resting upon the earth. Soften the shoulders and feel the gentle alignment of your spine, standing tall. Softening the lower jaw, relaxing the eyes within their sockets. Performing a curious scan of the length of your body and just noticing areas that might not be quite awake. Or perhaps encountering areas of your body that are alive and vibrating with energy. There's no particular way that your energy or physical body is supposed to be in this moment. We're just simply looking with curiosity at what we have to work with today on the mat. And sending all the love and compassion that we can muster into every corner and crevice of your physical and energetic self. Inhale and let your palms slide overhead. Exhale and let your hands find the earth. Inhale and bring your palms back to the heart in Anjali Mudra. And exhale, sending that energy straight forward in front of your heart and then opening up. Just a little variation on our sun breath. We're still gathering energy, pulling that energy up over your head and sending it out into the world. And then pulling that energy out of the heart, send that out into the world as well. Alternately, taking the hands all the way overhead. Just often imagining yourself standing in a gentle spring shower. But this time, instead of raindrops, we're just feeling energy drop down onto the crown of the head and onto the earth beside you. And the next time that your fingertips land to the earth, we'll just start letting the shoulders, neck, and head sway from one side to the other, alternately making connection with the earth on one side and then the other, all the while maintaining a sense of balance between left and right sitting bones. So we're feeling a gentle awakening along the sides of the body. You can add a dristi, a head turn away from your handprint on the earth, moving through the cervical spine, feeling the core active, supporting and stabilizing this movement. And then when one hand drops to the earth, instead of letting that hand sit by the body, we're going to allow it to flow all the way overhead. Taking a deep, relaxing breath, we'll just hang out here in seated crescent moon. Arm that is your kickstand can be straight, or you can gently bend that elbow to find a little deeper side body bend. And you can keep your gaze moving in the direction opposite your grounded hand. And from this space, the arm raised overhead will start to track back to the wall behind you, landing ultimately onto the earth with palms flat. Rotate the shoulder girdle away from your fingertips resting on the earth. This places the spine in a posture of extension, so we have some arching in the back, as well as rotation at the waistband. You can let your head and neck move in any way that frees any tension that you experience in the neck or jaw. And then softening the elbows, press into your handprints and come back to a neutral spine. We'll take that seated crescent moon to the other side. Sitting bones remain balanced and we're leaning the shoulders, neck, and head toward a sidewall into gravity. Letting your gaze perhaps stay up towards your raised elbow crease. Breathing into an expanded side body. And then when you're ready, let those raised fingertips float back behind you until they find a resting place upon the earth. Use that bind with the hands to rotate the shoulder girdle and gaze toward the side wall. Feeling gentle extension in the spine. We're gently arching the back and rotating at the waist. Handprints and the length of your arms, serving as kickstands to support. And once the body is stable, you can move the neck and head in gentle shifts, just releasing any tension that you might find in the neck or jaw. And then softening through the elbows, press into your handprints to bring the spine back to neutral, seated in easy pose. From our seated posture in easy pose, we'll lengthen one leg all the way out to the side, settling the pelvis, bringing those sitting bones into a balanced configuration as best you can. Letting the bent knee just fall into gravity with very little resistance. Wherever it lands is perfect. And then we'll pay attention to the extended leg. Roll through the hip joint, just letting your toes windshield wiper from left to right. And feel that movement of the ankle and toes echo back all the way to the hip joint. Feeling the internal and external rotation of the thigh bone in the hip socket. We'll let that extended leg come into stillness with the toes pointing skyward, flexing through the ankle. And we'll take the heart center and just shift it forward in front of the sitting bones into a gentle forward flexion, using your hands and arms as kickstands to support the weight of the shoulders, neck, and head. You can add a little bit of flexion and extension in the spine through cat and cow here in your seated forward bend. Deep, easy breaths. Connecting to the parts of your body that are just naturally and organically enjoying this posture, as well as the parts of your body that might be resisting or just praying for this to end. And the next time your spine finds neutral alignment, we'll walk the handprints toward the extended leg, and you can stack your hands atop the extended leg's thigh bone, or let the hands rest on either side of your extended leg. We're adding rotation of the lumbar spine, squaring the shoulders, neck, and head with your extended leg. And once all the body parts are in a nice, comfortable position, you can think about letting the heart center lengthen over the extended leg, walking a little further with your handprints towards your footprint. Nice, easy breaths here. Again, noticing which parts of your body are really finding joy and relaxation in this posture, and which parts are struggling, perhaps waiting for the next position change and a release of tension. Walk your fingertips back toward your sitting bones to neutralize the spine. And now we'll turn our heart center away from the extended leg, using your hands to lift the sitting bones and come into a lightning bolt posture. You can balance into your fingertips here to add a little more extension to the spine. One leg bent underneath the pelvis, opposite leg extended directly behind you. You can lower down into bent elbows and flat palms to release tension in the low back. Or reach up a little higher, and you'll feel that stretch evolve along the front of the torso and even fall deeply into the hip flexor of the leg extended behind you. If your bent knee is feeling a little too much tension here, you can lift the hips and bend that back leg gently. And just add some side to side swaying. There's lots of ways you can modify this to suit the level of comfort of your body. But yet another option would be to lean into the side of the body with the bent leg and transition this posture to pigeon, creating external rotation at the bent leg's hip. So again, lots of options here for finding an awakening in your body that suits your level of flexibility in this breath. With an inhale, we'll drop our weight back into the sitting bones and return to our start position of one leg bent with the heel resting at the base of the pelvis and the opposite leg extended. We'll transition through lengthening both legs long, and you can adjust the distance between your ankles to suit the level of stretch and flexibility that's available to you in the inner thighs. And we'll just let the hands slide across the length of the legs as we lower the heart center into gravity, keeping an open heart. Another option for the hands and arms is to reach back behind the tailbone and lace your fingers together and just let your hands and arms rest on the back side of your body. This posture of the arms forces you to lead with the heart and ensures that we will be bending the torso at the hip creases as opposed to just simply collapsing the upper chest. We're looking for that hip crease flexion. Another option would be to let the hands find a space in front of your chest to support the weight of the shoulders, neck, and head. And you can walk those handprints forward. Or if you're feeling a little tension in one side of the waistband or the other, you can go back to a little bit of spinal rotation here. Always staying with the breath. And then with an inhale, we'll bring the shoulders back, stacked vertically over the hips. Bend the leg that's been sitting extended for a good while. Coming into our one-legged forward fold on the opposite side. This is a unique version of it. And we'll lean our heart center forward. Just finding a nice easy forward fold that stretches the QLs on either side of the spine, the back of your body. And of course you can press into your palms and add some cat and cow stretches here. Pushing and pulling gently with the hands, rounding, and then extending through the spine. And holding on to that easy hinge at the hips, we'll walk the handprints toward the extended leg. You can drop the handprints on top of the thigh bone and use that bind to rotate the shoulder girdle, or simply land your hands on either side of the extended leg. And as an exhale arrives, you can experiment with leaning a little deeper over the extended leg. Sometimes I find it helpful to press into my palms and imagine scrubbing them back toward the hips in an effort to press the heart center forward over the extended leg. And then walking your handprints back toward the sitting bones, neutralize the spine. And we'll turn our heart center away from the extended leg, finding that lightning bolt posture, this time on the opposite side. Settling in, noticing if the forward bent knee is comfortable with that deep hinge, or if it's safer for us to bring the hips up and rock a bit from side to side. At some point, you might feel invited to release the weight of your hips into that bent leg's heel to find this lightning bolt posture that awakens the hip flexor, stretches the rectus abdominis. You can keep the arms long. You can even prop up a little higher by spidering the fingertips, lifting the palms and balancing into the fingertips. And of course, this higher the head and neck and shoulders travel, the more compression you might feel in your low back. So if that's your goal, to feel that extension of the body, lift your shoulders, neck, and head as high as you comfortably can. Or if you're looking for more of a sense of release and your forward bent knee is comfortable, you can decide to lower your torso closer to the earth. Just making sure that your spine doesn't sink between the shoulders. And then the final option is to lean your hips into the bent leg side of the body to free the ankle and make the transition into a gentle warming pigeon posture. Just adding external rotation at the hip joint for those who care to try it. And you still have the option of keeping your shoulders, neck, and head high, or lowering closer to the earth. Choosing which position of your muscles and connective tissue and the alignment of your bones just feels as if it offers an opportunity for awakening in your body. It's not about pushing or shoving, especially as we continue to warm the body. With an inhale, slowly make your way back to a seated posture. Coming back to our start point. And now we'll make the transition into fire log pose or double pigeon, placing the bent leg with the shin square crosswise to your heart center. And then the extended leg's gonna crawl back and we'll drop the lower leg bone over the thigh bone. Once you have the legs in a generalized position, lift the hips and place your sitting bones down to the earth so that they're balanced and level. If you have a block, if you're struggling with getting the pelvis level, grab a block. And once again, my blocks are nowhere to be seen, but you can also use a blanket, a rolled or folded blanket, to prop your sitting bones up just a little higher, which might help you find this leg bone lower leg bone over upper leg bone position of double pigeon or fire log. Another helpful tip is if you're really struggling with hip or knee tension, is to place your hands further behind you and lean your shoulders, neck, and head back. The goal is to open up at the hips. So if the primary sensation you're feeling in this posture is arising from the knees or ankles, then we're doing it wrong. So we want to release some of that pressure. Feel your sitting bones balanced level on the earth. We don't want the pelvis tilting, if at all possible. So we're going to make adjustments in the upper body to make that happen. You can lean the shoulders, neck, and head back. But of course, if you're feeling a lot of fluidity in the hips, you might actually lean your shoulders, neck, and head gently forward. All about what sensations are arising out of the hips and specifically the knees. Flexing your ankle joints and bringing the toes back toward their respective knees is a great way to stabilize the knees and reduce the incidence of injury in torquing that knee joint in this posture, because it's very possible. You can even add a little bit of a rocking movement here, as long as it's in slow motion. We don't want any ballistic movement. It's almost like we're dancing up to that tension in the joint. And as soon as we encounter that tension, we back off. It's not about shoving the body into a specific alignment. Don't forget to hold on to the breath here. And then coming back to a more restful posture, if you can free your hands here, if they're not holding you in steadiness, let's come back to our mudra. Touching the ring fingers and little fingers together and holding your palms open. As you hold this mudra, I have a question for you. When you are in a stressful situation, which one of your faces automatically is shown? Do you revert to who you are authentically and the filters are gone? Or do the filters take over and your authenticity shrinks? It's just a simple question. It's a curious question. It's not meant for you to start down a path of self-judgment. Just asking and inquiring, when my body or my energy is under stress, which of my two faces becomes the majority? Inhaling, exhaling, asking. From here, we'll soften the hands and we'll press. We're going to cross the legs even further so that both footprints can find the earth. We're just going to switch to the other side. So if you're not up for the fun and games, you can just wait and switch your legs. But for those of you that might want a little bit of fun and challenge this morning, we're going to finish crossing those legs all the way so the inner thighs touch together, footprints flat to the earth. Place your hands on top of the knee, it's on top of the knee stack, and follow down to your ankle and set your hands to the earth. From here, we're going to push into our footprints and lift the hips. Walk your handprints in a half circle back behind you, spinning on the balls of your feet, lower the hips and drop them back down to the earth, the block or the blanket, whatever you are sitting on. And then we'll slide the knees apart from one another until we find our double pigeon on the opposite side. The shins are crosswise, perpendicular to the heart. Lower leg bone over upper thigh bone on the opposite leg. And don't be surprised if there's a completely different experience on this second side of the body. That's common because none of our joints are symmetrical in perfect unison. They're different, they're unique. So if you need to lean back on this side where you did not on the other side, accept that and embrace it. It's all about what sensation arises from the hip creases and both of your knees. That is your guiding point here. Our intention is to let the body speak freely without condemnation and judgment. and to learn to listen to the body rather than that nagging voice that is the ego. Feel into your body. Use your powers of interoception, the knowledge and confidence you have in how your body moves safely, and recognizing when you might slip into an area that's a little more dangerous. Just a reminder that this posture is about balancing the pelvis. If you're feeling more weight in one sitting bone than the other, can you gently correct for that? What has to happen for you to feel that sense of balance and symmetry? Maybe you need to lean back. Pull some of the tension out of the posture. Getting deep hip opening here. And then from here, we'll take the top leg's ankle and spin it all the way around toward the back, making the transition into deer pose. You can keep your hips up on a blanket. The blocks might be a little bit too much. If you're using blocks, you may want to pop back down to the floor. If you have a soft blanket, you can probably continue to leave that under your sitting bones in deer pose or Z pose. We're just going to use a little bit of a upper body strengthening routine from this posture with the lower body. Turn your heart center toward the knee of the leg that is sitting in front of your torso, and drop your hands a little wider than shoulder distance on either side of that bent knee. And we'll start here with just a few breaths of cat and cow, really just to settle the spine. And from here, we'll move into dolphin dives. With an exhale, tuck the pelvis, so tucking the tailbone under, rolling the chin to the chest, so that as you begin your exhale, bend the elbows back towards your hips. Don't let them splay out to the sides, and lower the crown of your head toward the earth, just as low as you comfortably can. And then with the inhale, let our gaze slip forward to the horizon. The sitting bones are going to roll back behind you to extend the spine, and we rise all the way to the arms long and strong. Exhale, roll chin to the chest, tuck the tailbone, bend the elbows, slow motion, lowering your crown toward the earth. And when you get as near to the earth as you comfortably can, breathe in, extend the spine, and rise. These are dolphin dives. They're slow motion. The shoulder girdle is solid and strong. The core is active. Your arms are holding the weight of the shoulders, neck, and head. It's a coordinated effort. Check in with your toes and notice if they're all curled under and tight, or if they're soft and relaxed. See if you can bring them in that soft and relaxed side of the paradigm. Looking for relaxation from the knees down through the ankles, with deep activation of the core, the chest, the shoulders, arms, the neck is moving. One last time, we'll dive down and rise up with a strong core and strong arms. Press into your handprints and come back to a nice tall spine. Use your core strength to spin the legs around to the opposite side. We're looking toward balance with the pelvis, but we know in this organization of the legs, we're probably not going to find a completely leveled pelvis. So whatever you land in comfortably is perfect. Do keep a watchful eye on the ankles. We want the toes more toward pointed rather than ankle joints flexed in deer pose. Turn your heart center toward the forward leg with the shin in front of your belly, and drop your handprints to the mat, wider than shoulder width, fingers spread apart, long, strong arms. And you can start with a few breaths in cat and cow. Remember, if you're feeling your elbows bend out to the side, the cure for that is to rotate your fingers away from your heart center just gently, so that when you bend your elbows, they drop onto either side of the rib cage versus wing out to the sides. And when you're ready, you can start your dolphin dives, rounding and collapsing the spine to dive down. And then extending, arching the back to rise. This is mostly about spinal movement. It's not just push-ups for the arms. There's a lot of moving parts to dolphin dives. Pretty much the only parts of the body that are inactive would be like from the knees on down through the ankles, arches, and toes. Coordinating movement with breath. One last deep dive. And pressing into the palms, come back to a neutral pelvis. If you're using supports underneath the hips, this would be a great time to set them off to the side, and we'll make the transition into a hands and knees posture onto your mat. Take your time to position your knees and handprints with attention to the spine, making sure that there's not too little space between the knees and hands, which will force your spine into rounding upward. But we're also not looking for so much space between the knees and handprints that your belly naturally sags into gravity. Where can you place your knees and hands so that the length of your spine has ample white space between each vertebrae, but maintains its normal natural curve? Let's take the hips back and toward one side. Leave your handprints wherever they were. Don't let them drag back. We're just finding a nice stretch for the outer hip. Using your core strength to support here. We're not releasing. And then driving the shoulders back up over the heels of the hands and the fingertips. Pull your hips to the opposite side wall. And in this version of transition between child's pose and hands and knees, it's more active. We're not fully releasing the sitting bones to the heels. We're keeping the core strong, holding on to strength in the gateway of the arms. So it's almost as if we're drawing the sides of a triangle as we drop the hips back to one side, flow to that top point, and then drop the hips back toward the opposite base of the triangle. And you can probably find a nice easy flow of breath here, inhaling the crown forward, exhaling to pull the sitting bones back to one side. And the next time that you return to hands and knees, we'll let the hips flow back through the center and land at the center line of the base of the triangle that we were drawing. And just resting here in extended child's pose. Let's bring our handprints slowly back toward the torso, and we're going to take the hands and press the webbing of between your thumbs and index fingers into the sides of your waistband. Let's give this a try, and then we'll create some modifications if it doesn't feel comfortable for some of us. With an inhale, we'll slowly hinge through the hip creases and come into hero's pose, stacking the shoulders over the hips, gaze to the horizon. We're just going to keep the handprints up the sides of the waistband. Activate the core and drop your forehead back toward the earth. When the chest meets the tops of the thighs, you can release your forehead to the mat, or you can just let your forehead float above the mat. Using our core strength to flow down toward the earth, pressing into the tops of your feet, knees and shins, activating core strength with a strong navel center to rise back up. If you're feeling like having your hands press into the earth would be a great help so that you could really focus on using your core, don't be shy. Let your hands help you lower your shoulders, neck, and head, and help you lift your shoulders, neck, and head. As long as you're staying focused on the navel center and building core strength, I don't care if you use some extra supports from your hands. For those of you that are not struggling here and you're feeling strong, we can add a second piece to this from hero's pose. We'll keep the core active, press into your shins and the tops of your feet, and rise all the way into a knee stand. And then slowly soften your hips back towards your heels and make your way back to our child's pose. And again, if you want to use your hands, feel free to do so. You could even add long levers out front and come into a kneeling upward salute. Having those arms and hands be counterbalances can be very helpful in learning how to use your core. So just because you're using your hands and arms doesn't mean you're cheating. It just means you're adding that counterbalance that's going to help you focus into using the strength of your core. Hinging from the hips, you can make it one slow flow movement all the way to a knee stand and one slow flow movement all the way back to child's pose. Or you can break that into two pieces, hinging from the hips, leaving the hips by the heels, and then rising up into your knee stand. So there's lots of different options here for changing the pattern of the flow of the hips, as well as how you're utilizing your arms. So just let this be your flow, because regardless of how you use your arms or how you sequence the movements, if you break it down or make it one flowing, effortless, rhythmic movement, we're all using the same muscles. Find a nice easy flow with your breath as well. And the next time that you come into a knee stand, and again, if you're using a blanket underneath your knee or you've pleated your mat, leave it there, that's fine. We're gonna make the transition from this knee stand into a lunge with one leg forward. And there's a couple ways you can get there. You can come back down to hands and knees and bring one foot forward, or you can utilize balance if your knees will allow it, and just simply draw one foot forward and then fall into the lunge. So however you want to arrive there, but our intention once we're in the lunge posture is to have that forward knee, the lower leg perpendicular to the earth. So the knee is stacked over the ankle. Whether you have to walk your back leg behind you or walk your forward leg closer to the front edge of your mat, whatever allows you to find that perpendicular orientation of your lower leg. Soften the hips. If your chest and belly gets in the way, a nice way to get around that is to bring both handprints to the inside edge of your forward foot. I have short arms, so that actually feels a lot better for my body. I just need to make sure that my forward footprint stays flat to the floor and that my bent knee doesn't drop out to the side. I want to keep that bent forward knee right next to my shoulder in the inside handprint version of a lunge. And from here, we'll guide the hips back and then fall forward into gravity. If you want to add this little movement, especially if the lunge feels pretty intense, adding some dynamic flow can take away some of that intensity. Just make sure that your hips are tracking straight forward and back along those long edges of your mat, and we're not diagonally shifting. Keep the hips under control, forward and back, tracking parallel to the long edges of your mat. Or you can choose to just hang out here, let your hips just fall into gravity, grab that deep stretch and just be with it. Walking your handprints a little further back. If your handprints are on the inside edge of your forward foot, you can let that leg sweep out past the side to return, or you can just walk it straight back. And we'll let the hips Find the heels in extended child's pose, just briefly balancing back into symmetry before rising back to hands and knees and bringing the opposite footprint forward. Our first goal is to find the lunge that suits our body and allows us to take that forward bent knee right above the ankle, making any adjustments that are necessary for your body to find that orientation. And again, if your chest, like mine, is in the way, it's not my boobs, God, I wish it was, but it's not, it's my chest and belly. You can walk that footprint away from the center, place your handprints inside the forward footprint. Just make sure that you don't lose control of the hip and find external rotation. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just a different posture. So the footprint is flat and the shoulder and knee are right next to one another if your handprints are inside the edge of your forward footprint. And you can add that movement of hips gliding forward and back, resting weight into your hands and arms. Just keep a watchful eye on the hips, making sure that they're flowing forward and back, parallel to the long edges of your mat. Balancing our efforts between the left and right hip joints. And you can also choose to just hang out here, letting the heaviness of the hips find gravity. And when you're ready to exit this deep lunge, if your handprints are on the inside edge of that forward foot, you can literally spin that leg out to the side wall to replace it back. Or if your handprints are on either side, just bring that knee back and we'll return together to extended child's pose. Inhaling back to hands and knees. We're going to work a little more. That was a lot of hip work and opening. So focus now on the upper body just a bit. Coming into the upper half of spinal balance. First, anchor the shoulders down and away from the ears and feel a sense of strong stability arise in the front of the chest and across the upper back. Activate the core and draw the navel center in. Make sure your handprints are positioned so that if you bend an elbow gently, it doesn't splay out to the side, it bends down. Adjust your handprints accordingly because we may or may not add an elbow bend. We're going to combine spinal balance with a yogi push-up. So one arm will extend forward at torso height, and the opposite elbow, while in balance, will gently bend and then extend. Release the raised handprint back to the earth, extend the opposite arm, and then if you're feeling adventurous, add that little micro bend, that yogi push-up. And that's putting a lot of weight and pressure. Another option here would be to lengthen one arm forward, find balance, return that handprint to the earth, add your yogi push-up with both arms supporting the weight of the shoulders, neck, and head. So a couple different ways you can approach this based on how strong and stable you're feeling today. And you might even alternate between your yogi push-up with one arm and a yogi push-up with both handprints to the earth. So pattern it the way that it supports your level of strength that's available to you in this breath. The lower body staying pretty relaxed, but of course we're stabilizing with the core, pulling the navel center in, feeling the shoulders really strong and stable. And I don't know if your body's like mine, but that very first one arm push-up that I did, I felt vibrational shaking. Just remember that when you have a limb that's shaking under the muscular tension, that's a pretty strong signal that you're at your edge. So you may choose to back off and add more of the double arm yogi push-ups, little tiny micro bends. Or maybe you just forego the push-ups altogether and practice balancing with very little lateral shift, especially when we're lifting the arms. You don't have to feel a lot of shift in the core. And then coming back to hands and knees, let's give the wrists and arms a break. Sliding the hips back toward the heels, soften your arms, bring the palms together and let your fingers point skyward from behind to the back of your skull. This is a nice tricep stretch. The underneath side of your upper arm bone is facing toward the earth, and it relieves a lot of pressure from the wrists and fingers. Soften into the breath here. You might even roll your palms to face your torso, spreading out your elbows and letting your your ring fingers and little fingers come together. You'll probably have to widen your elbows to do it, but you can create Diva Mukti Mudra here in this prostrate position. As we move through some of these challenging physical poses, working so hard to coordinate movement and breath, which part of you starts to shine through? Your authenticity or that filtered sense of personality? Remember, they're both positive aspects of our personality. But more often than not, it is your authenticity that shines on the yoga mat. Releasing the hands, drop your palms to the mat. Coming back to extended child's pose. Pausing here briefly to release tension in every muscle that you can identify that's holding tight. It might be in the fingers, the toes, the knees or elbows. Maybe it's the belly or the chest. Or maybe it's your mind with a firm grip on repetitive thoughts. Inhaling through hands and knees. Roll the toes under, float the knees, stretch through the arches, and proceed to downward facing dog. Feeling the effects of inversion, letting those heels drop a little closer to the earth, perhaps pedaling the knees if your calves and hamstrings are a little tight here and you want to loosen them. Keep taking nice deep breaths. Hold gentle tension at the navel center. Strong, stable arms. Lifting the tailbone and drawing it over the back edge of your mat. Energy balance between your handprints and your footprints perfectly. Imagine your body creating your best interpretation of an equilateral triangle. It has more to do with balancing the weight between your footprints and your hands than trying to create the exact same length of sides on your triangle. With an inhale, walk your footprints forward slowly and feel your downward facing dog slowly transitioning into a forward fold. We're putting more and more weight into your footprints with each step forward until your heels rest to the earth and your handprints are drawn away from the earth. Lightness in the hands, if they're even touching the earth, they may not be. And heaviness in your footprints. Gently pedaling the knees in deep forward fold. Release the weight of the shoulders, neck, and head. And then slowly balance out your energies, pressing equally through the bottoms of both feet. Reverse swan dive, rising with the arms flowing past the side walls until you come all the way into a standing upward salute. Press the palms together, bring thumbs to the heart, and just notice, perhaps there's a sense of clarity that arises after all of that oxygenated blood flow to the brain. Let's practice our mudra again, opening up the palms, attaching the ring fingers and little fingers, and just holding that gesture in front of your solar plexus. We'll complete the vigorous movement of our practice today with some sun salutations. We got to figure out a way to bring that sun back, right? And as we're practicing these sun salutations, I'm challenging you to think about when you are fully engaged with sun salutations, which part of your personality, which aspect of your personality is prevalent? Is it your deep authenticity or the filtered sense of who you are that's worried about how the posture looks to others that might be in the room? Or just your own ego's judgment of how you're practicing? So when you're ready, release the mudra, come to standing mountain, balancing your energies between the 6 movements of the spine. And when you're ready, take a big inhale with the arms floating overhead. Exhale, hinge at the hips and release your shoulders, neck, and head into a full forward bend. Pause here to surrender. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale to bend your knees and plant your handprints to the earth with long, strong arms and stable shoulders. And then lifting up the tailbone, take a step back with one foot followed by the other, landing your weight balanced between hands and feet in downward facing dog. Inhale, plank, softening the hips. Of course, you have the option of bending the knees. And then we'll soften the elbows and lower your heart center. Remember, the hips land last. Inhale, baby cobra, picking up the navel center, keeping the shoulder girdle stabilized and the elbows hugging into the side body. And we'll press into the hands and arms to lift the shoulders, neck, and head, coming into a high cobra, or if it's more comfortable for your spine, tuck the toes under and lift your knees into an up dog. Now you have a little more leeway in lifting or lowering the hips, which will release or intensify tension in the lumbar spine. From up dog, we'll take downward facing dog, lifting and tenting the hips, walking your footprints forward. Again, this is a slow motion transition that has us feeling the accumulation of weight into the lower body, the strength of the legs, until we find ourselves just naturally transitioning into a full forward bend. If your hamstrings and low back are really tight here, soften the knees. Let your belly sit atop your thighs. Because by softening the hamstrings, hopefully you'll be able to direct the stretch more into your lumbar spine. And that just feels so nice. Reverse swan dive, pushing into your footprints, tapping into core strength to rise into a standing upward salute. And from here, we'll lace our fingers together, roll the palms skyward. First of all, just feeling that linear strength, neutral spine, strong legs, long arms. And then from here, we'll take a standing back bend. The first thing I'd ask you to do is soften your knees. And then you can decide if you want to keep these hands and arms stretching overhead as you open up the heart and surrender to gravity, or if you prefer to take your hands to either side of your waistband. There's a little more support for opening up the chest here. You also have the option to keep your gaze toward the horizon and focus on opening up across the chest crosswise. That's one of the focuses in spinal extension, is crosswise between the shoulders and the front of the chest, just opening up. And you can keep your gaze to the horizon here. If you start to let your gaze rise, the further your gaze moves toward the clouds, the more you'll engage the line of energy that is vertical, from crown to tail. So there's 2 lines of energy here, and you can choose to focus on one or both. Cross the chest, or all the way across the chest and from crown to tail. Don't forget to keep the breath moving. And of course, you can modify your choice of hand placement at any time. It's just about opening up the heart. And as we're here in this open heart position, we're going to visualize a gentle spring rain just coming down, See if you can feel the temperature of the raindrops on your skin, on your upturned face, or the crown of your head. And perhaps you can feel the intensity of the drops. Maybe your rain is more like a light spring shower. Or maybe there's a beautiful energetic release in feeling a pounding rain. This is your experience, so build it as you like. There might even be some stormy clouds overhead, or maybe it's just a light gray cloud with a momentary shower. Create your shower experience. And then when you're ready, slowly use your core strength to come back to mountain. Let your hands rest on either side. And just imagine all your cares and worries washed away with that rain. Inhale, upward salute. Exhale, forward hinge slowly. We were in a back bend, so take your time finding the counter pose, returning to a forward flexion. Inhale, halfway lift. Drop your hands, bend your knees, come back down to your knees. And we'll soften the hips once again back toward the heels, finding your version of hero's pose. Keeping in mind that this very deep knee flexion is not for everybody. Another option here, if you're struggling with the knees, is to bring one footprint forward. And that way you can keep your hips a little higher. You can work your way into a little more tension in the knee. And if you choose that variation, just be sure to practice it on both sides. Gives you a little more control over how much flexion you introduce to the bent leg. And then when you're ready, slide your hips off to one side to take a seated posture. And we'll make our way into a supine lying posture in preparation for Shavasana. Take your time positioning your spine onto the earth, footprints flat. Lifting and lowering, lower, mid, and upper spine through the back of the head so that your spine is neutral and comfortably positioned. Once that spine is fully supported in a resting posture, then you can position your limbs, lengthening the legs, letting the toes naturally drop in or out. Then we'll take the hands and arms out toward either side wall, and we'll lift the arms and hands toward the ceiling, placing your aligned palms in front of your heart, pointing skyward. Rock a little from side to side, feeling your upper back spread out across the earth. We want full contact between the shoulders across the upper back. When you're ready, come into stillness, position the back of your head so that your forehead and chin feel neutral and parallel to the earth. And then we'll let the handprints part and the arms fall to the earth, fully extended, just a short distance away from the side body where you can feel your shoulders sink into the earth. Holding white space between upper and lower jaw. If it feels comfortable and safe, allow your eyes to drift closed. As soon as the eyes close, visualize a wave of relaxation that originates in your face and just washes in a single wave over the entire length of your body. And without repositioning your hands into the mudra, bring to mind Diva Mukti Mudra. Your left open palm representing your deepest authentic self. This is you singing in the car when you're by yourself with the windows rolled down. This is you dancing in front of a mirror with no one watching. This is the version of you It arises when no one else is looking. And then bring your awareness and attention into your vision of the mudra, focusing now on your right hand, your filtered personality. This is the you that chooses your words carefully when you speak them out loud, and they may not necessarily always align with the words that are being spoken inside your head. This is the you that filters sadness and displays cheerfulness outwardly. Very often in the filtered personality, there's a disconnect between what we project and what we're actually feeling. And sometimes that's the perfect response to life. It doesn't make one part of you good and one part of you bad. These are just simply some of the parts of being human that we all experience. Sending your gaze from left to right, slowly open your eyes. Wiggle your toes and fingers. Bring your footprints to the earth with knees raised and let your knees fall to one side. Press your palms into the earth. Take your time. Coming back to a seated posture. And we'll make the gesture, connecting the ring fingers and little fingers with open palms, soft hands. Just a final reminder that these two halves of our personality are both natural, normal, and healthy, especially when we hold them in perfect balance. Namaste.